as useful there. My name's Syed, I'm a member of London2Calais, and today we're here to discuss the kind of strategies that this movement needs. So when we set up London2Calais initially, there was very much a tendency within the broader refugee solidarity movement to lean towards just giving, or towards focusing on purely the humanitarian aid and charity work as a solution, and that's still very much the case today. And of course that kind of help and assistance is needed out there. It's helping people survive on a day-to-day level, it's helping people to get by, and it's necessary, and it forms actually a central part of the kind of activity that we do within London2Calais. But what goes hand in hand with a focus on the humanitarian aspect is a kind of apolitical or non-political analysis of the situation, and a kind of unsophisticated understanding of what's going on and what a lasting solution to this so-called crisis would look like. And from the very outset, we've been clear in London2Calais that there needs to be a political movement within the UK that can force the government to change its policy on the issue. And as you mentioned, 20,000 people over 5 years just from Syria, just on a temporary basis, is not a solution that we're willing to accept. And what we found by going out there is that it's not enough to just be handing out tins of food to people in the jungle. The very next day, people will still be hungry. It's not enough to just take clothes over there. The very next day, people will still need to be clothed and be arriving. And in those conditions, nothing's lasting long enough. And it's not enough to just build a better camp or a more comfortable camp, because A, the camp shouldn't be there in the first place, and B, no matter how nice or how comfortable we try to make it, the French state can come in at any time with tear gas and clear people, with bulldozers and crush the camp and forcibly relocate people and move them about and disperse them. And this is exactly what happened at the turn of the millennium in Calais. There was a proper refugee camp in Calais, the Sanguet camp, and it was run by the Red Cross, and it was shut down by Sarkozy, with the support of the British government, who were arguing that it was a base from which people are trying to enter Britain on lorries. Leaving aside the fact that there's no actual established process for people to claim asylum in Britain from there. But that camp wasn't shut down overnight, and it didn't go down without a fight. There were riots between 2000 and 2001 as refugees resisted the French state, but it was eventually crushed and it was cleared. And the people who managed to get out and managed to move away from that moved into the woodlands around Calais, and then into the area now known as a jungle. And now in London2Calais, we've been engaging in convoys of aid, taking material solidarity over to the camp. And up until now, this is focused primarily on food and clothes. And as the situation continues to change and develop, we're discussing within our group and with the people that we work with different ways in which we can contribute, whether it's by providing building materials or medical aid or whatever it might be. And what's needed out there is constantly changing as well. But we want to put forward a kind of dual strategy of, on the one hand, political struggle and campaigning, and on the other hand, material solidarity, and these two things need to be quite closely linked. And I put it to you that you can't just have one without the other. You can't just have tins of food or building material going over, constructing flimsy shelters or feeding people for a day, and equally you can't just be standing outside Westminster with a megaphone and a petition. We need to, the politics has to be linked to the act of taking over material solidarity for it to be able to reflect the gravity of the situation on the doorstep, and the material solidarity has to be linked to the political campaigning for it to be thought out, for it to be strategic. Otherwise, we may as well just be an NGO or charity workers or whatever. And it's not just enough to be concerned with this as a faraway problem. We are finding now we're starting to make links with people who are managing to get over and make the dangerous crossing from Calais, from the jungle into Britain and into London as well. And we need to start thinking about how we can welcome them and how we can give them the support and the networks that they need to defend them from the racists, from the far right, from the government, from the Home Office, and all of that. So, what are the kind of politics around London2Calais? Firstly, we want a solution that's based on Britain establishing a safe passage for people into the country and granting more people asylum. And that's to demand of people living in the jungle. When we marched with them on the 19th of September from the jungle up to the port fences in Calais, they were not demanding tins of food, they were not demanding clothes, they were not demanding firewood or building material, which is all stuff that they desperately need to survive. Their chants were no jungle, UK border open now. That's what they're calling for, and that has to be our goal as well within this movement. And without keeping that in mind, without a political movement alongside the humanitarian stuff, I think we won't really be moving this thing forward or achieving our aims. Secondly, we need to have, and there was a session about this earlier in the other room, we need to have a very strong and principled anti-racism that runs through all aspects of our work within this movement, because racism is a central prop for the political establishment, for the media, for the ruling class to get away with this policy of denying people asylum and keeping them locked out. And every day in the press and in the political establishment, you hear people like David Cameron using language like swarms, Philip Hammond, Theresa May, and all the rest of that. And all their comments are an attempt to whip up racism, to mobilize racism in society, to justify their stance of keeping the border shut. And I think it's racist to make this distinction between good refugees on the one hand and bad refugees or economic migrants, for example, and all that. Whether refugees are coming from Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, or the less talked about places, Eritrea, Sudan, Darfur, we actually need to be saying that everyone who's displaced as a result of this is someone that we need to welcome into our society. And on top of that, we don't want to get drawn into this distinction between, yes, we support the refugees, but we have a problem with immigration or economic migrants in general. That itself is always riddled with racist assumptions. Nobody's really complaining about the levels of American immigrants living in this country, or the level of Australians coming over to work here and stealing our jobs. It's always a problem with the wrong colour immigrants from the wrong parts of the world with the wrong type of passports, and we need to be very firm on that. Our group itself is a very diverse collective of people from all sorts of backgrounds, and when we're going into the jungle, that's what we want to be able to kind of reflect as well. The other aspect to that is that we have got the far right, Nazi groups, fascist organisations marching in Dover, calling for the border to be shut down, and we need to be the antithesis of that, and we need to take up the argument for it to be open and for people to be let in. And moreover, another one of our key political, another one of the things that's at the centre of our politics is the opposition to imperialism, to war, to occupation, to interventions around the world, to the propping up of brutal dictatorships wherever they may be by any government. It's not enough to just say that we're against Russian bombs or Russian intervention in Syria. Of course we are, but we're against all intervention of any imperialist power around the world, and because that is one of the major causes of the displacement of people. As a comrade mentioned about how many Syrian refugees are displaced by the conflict there and so on and so forth, and also Iraq and Afghanistan. These are countries in which Britain and its military and its interventions have directly wrecked these societies. When we're going over to Calais, we're meeting young boys from Afghanistan, young men and women from Iraq, whose society's been wrecked by the military occupation of this country, and actually we need to stand very firmly against that. And the movement for solidarity with refugees, the movement for Calais solidarity, has to kind of have this at the centre of it. And lastly, another one of our fundamental principles is that we believe in the freedom of movement for all people. And we aspire to a world in which there aren't any borders. And this seems, at first, to many people, to seem a very radical demand. But the opposition to it, when you get your head around it, is actually based on the racist idea that we can't open up the floodgates to all of these people coming in and all that. But actually, if you look at the Schengen project in Europe, it shows that open borders and freedom of movement of people between countries can work, and is not so much of a problem. But of course, we've seen more recently how there's two Europes there at play. There's the open Europe for people with EU passports, and then for refugees, for people from other parts of the world, it's very much Fortress Europe, which is intensifying, putting up more fences, putting up more blocks, and we have to ask ourselves a question in this movement: why is it that money can travel across borders freely and easily? Why is it that people with certain passports or people with money can travel across borders easily, and yet the people who need it the most aren't able to do that, and certain people are blocked from having that privilege at all? And I'm really pleased to be sharing a platform today with Abdulaziz from the Refugee Solidarity Movement, and they were central to organising that demonstration of 100,000 people through London demanding refugees welcome. I think that march represents a real important tipping point for what's possible in terms of our movement here in Britain. I came to this country as a refugee, as an asylum seeker in the early 90s, and grew up with the language of bogus asylum seekers and all that racism in the media, and I never would have thought even a year ago that it would be possible to see 100,000 people marching through London demanding that. So I really want to thank you guys for the work you've done around that. Excuse me. Similarly, we've had contributions today from organisations like Black Dissidents, Sisters Uncut, and they together with London2Calais had that fantastic demonstration a couple of Fridays ago at St Pancras, where we'll be heading later today as well. And actually, we need to take that to the next level. We're starting to make some progress on, yes, refugees should be welcome in our society, and we need to push it to the next level and take that fight to the borders and say, open the borders now. So that activity and what followed after the next day when we went to Dover and shut down the ferry port, the day after the St Pancras International departures was shut down, is a kind of militant and radical activity around borders that we can start doing to make people, to challenge people's notions and ideas around that. And we need more of that kind of action. What we also need, what we also need is to have the trade union movement, to have the working class organisations at the heart and at the forefront of these struggles. Because we had Wilf from the TUC earlier here, and it was actually really inspiring to hear him talking about how the TUC are working on policies and working on getting their members to support refugees coming over here. We need that to challenge the idea that these people are here threatening our jobs. We need that to take on the argument of a scarcity of resources, or that we're full and we can't take any more, because it's not immigrants, it's not refugees that have caused the NHS or the public services to be strained. It's the fact that we have a Tory government and before that a series of neoliberal governments following policies that have actually dismantled our public services and are continuing to do so. So we need to link all of this up with that movement against austerity, and over the next 5 years those battles will become more and more pronounced. And actually we need to link all of that to the struggle for refugees and for freedom of movement and things like that. And we will have to keep on changing up. I'll end with this, Chair. We're going to have to keep on changing up what we do and how we do it as the situation develops and continues to change. We need to build a network of people who are able to very quickly respond to a turn of events. Taking what's needed out to the jungle, doing what's necessary to take the movement forward in Britain and across Europe, and also receiving people when they're arriving here, giving them the support necessary to defend them from racists, from Nazis, from the police, and from the Home Office. We have some people here in this room today who have actually very recently made that journey and managed to get over here, and now they're facing all sorts of struggles upon arrival, and we need to work out what we can do there. So a dual strategy of, yes, material solidarity, linked on the other hand to a political campaign, and also this is not just a faraway problem, it's something that's in our society. These people are managing to get over here, and we need to work out how we can support them and how we can improve that and speed up that process as well.